Excuse me! Taxi!
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Now, one of the longest serving radio stations in America is coming to a close. CBS Radio, the network. There will be no more CBS Radio coming in May. They just gave the memo. This new phenom, Barry Weiss, she is running CBS. Some say she's running it into the ground, and some say she's doing what has to be done if there's going to be a CBS 100 years from now. Curtis Houck joins us, the great media student, scholar, doing all that great stuff for the Media Research Center and beyond. Curtis Houck, welcome back. How are you?
Good to be with you, my friend. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. My media diet is kind of like what I was just describing, on the phone all the time. The CBS is in turmoil. Does it matter? And who cares? Maybe we should all care. What's going on at CBS right now?
I mean, I think, on the most recent news, we'll start there with CBS News Radio. Yes, it is sad because it is an institution. I mean, all of these broadcast networks started here on the radio as we're talking right now before, obviously, television came about. So there's definitely the loss of a kind of historical brand, CBS News Radio. But I posed the question on X today, speaking of the phone, and said how many people listen to it. And a lot of the folks who did respond are either A, in the news business like us, or B, probably over the age of 45. And I think that is, the reality here, that a lot of Americans, and this ties into your point, are on their phones. They're getting their news that way. They're consuming podcasts. And with Odyssey, unrelated to CBS, one of your competitors shut down, and the great WABC is still going, thank goodness. But the reality is people are moving away from radio. Now, more broadly about CBS News, the balance sheets are something that everyone is struggling with, so I understand that Barry Weiss is simply the person who is there right now. There have been past layoffs at CBS, so I think it's kind of unfair to kind of suggest that she's merely just doing this willy-nilly to somehow create MAGA TV. And I say that's not true. They are nothing like conservative media. You watch them day in and day out. They still have people like Margaret Brennan. Yes, they have occasionally fair stories, like they're the only ones who followed up on what happened at Temple Israel out in Michigan. But on the other hand, they're still cranking out the same kind of bias. So anytime Jimmy Kimmel makes a remark like he did at the Oscars saying CBS is North Korean TV, it's just not grounded in reality.
No, I get it. By the way, the thing about radio, though, here what we're doing, it's innovative, and we have now a massive online presence, and people can listen to the radio on the phone. And if you look at podcasting, so interesting. It's almost like text messaging. People used to pick up the phone in the old days, in the 80s, and talk to each other, right? I mean, that would seem like a much more preferable thing to do than to send each other little small messages, right? Hey, if we had that in the 1980s, we would think the voice phone call is like the biggest invention in the world. We were limited to little fortune cookie messages to each other, and now we can speak on the phone, but it's like in reverse. It's crazy. I look at it that way. But look, one more thing about CBS, the evening news, Tony Dokoupil. I think he should change his name to Tony D. We got this weatherman in New York, Mr. G. Nobody knows what his last name is, but everybody knows Mr. G. Dokoupil is so complicated a last name. Tony D, he'd be a bigger star. How do you think that show's going?
Colloquially, yes. In our newsroom, we refer to him as Tony D when we're discussing the show amongst ourselves. So there you go. I mean, or Tony to Red Pill, because it's clear that, he's made a pivot since he was nearly run out of town for simply asking Ta-Nehisi Coates anything other than a series of softballs about his Gaza book a few years ago. I would say that it's still trying to find its footing. I mean, much was made about some of the technical snafus early on, or his piece about, the Secretary of State being a very memeable figure. But I will say, at the end of the day, though, when it comes to these kinds of newscasts, and you know this too, Greg, being in television for so long, the hosts are one part of the show. And it's particularly on a newscast like that, the correspondents are what really make the show. Because Tony could offer a more neutral setup, but if the correspondent takes things in an entirely different direction, what is the viewer to think? On balance, the viewer is going to say it is still a liberal newscast. And I think that's kind of where I would put that network right now, where Tony, will offer commentaries from time to time that are much more in line with, what Americans maybe in the middle are thinking, or as Barry Weiss says, this where 70% of the country lives. I will say, though, the correspondents are still the same kind of biased folks that you see on the morning show. Margaret Brennan, as I just mentioned, she was on last night with the head of the UN nuclear watchdog group, basically saying anything President Trump does in Iran will fail because Iran is determined as ever to make sure they have nukes, and there's not really anything anyone can do about it. And so I just have to say that there's still a lot of work to do. Because he can be great, but if the correspondents are still cranking out the same stuff, it's hard to say much has changed.
Well, that's very interesting. Who the hell was it? I think it was Michael Deaver, who was the deputy chief of staff to Ronald Reagan. And, Sam Donaldson back in the day would give Reagan a really hard time. He was very biased, did not like Ronald Reagan. And Sam Donaldson meets Michael Deaver at some party, and Sam Donaldson thinks he's going to jump down his throat. And Michael Deaver's like, "Oh man, Sam, you do such a great job." So, what are you talking about? Oh, they're so beautiful. But they're pretty negative. It doesn't matter. The visuals are so awesome. And they were so consumed with the visuals. They really thought and think about it, Reagan did not get positive mainstream media coverage.
No.
But he broke through even with the nasty camera, the nasty comments by the reporter and the reporter track. Ronald Reagan broke through. And it didn't matter what they said about him. America understood. And I find it fascinating. I wish I could study this stuff all day long. Newsbusters, tell us about that. Who funds it? How do you guys work? Who invented it? It's a great, great service. Everybody should check out the Media Research Center and Newsbusters. Managing editor here. Curtis, how did that all start?
Yeah, in 1987, Brent Bozell, Brent Baker, and Larry Gourlay, one of the fundraisers, the three of them and a few others started with an office in Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, and a bunch of VHS tapes and VCRs recording ABC, CBS, NBC evening newscasts. And it's grown to covering things 24/7. We have this huge cloud DVR system. We record more, and we have more in our archives than any particular entity in America, other than, I would say, the networks themselves, who obviously have their own historical record of their own programming. So we're a nonprofit 501c3. Folks can learn more at mrc.org to chip in a few dollars if they so choose. We have news coverage around the clock covering the best and worst of the liberal media, both qualitatively and quantitatively. And speaking of the phone, we do have an app that we launched a few months ago, the Newsbusters app on Apple and Google Play, that you can read our articles that way without having to open your web browser. And, we cover ABC, CBS, NBC, we cover big tech, we cover Apple News and Google News, because we know that's where a lot of folks, folks that maybe not be as much of a news junkies as we are and your listeners are, the friends who may fall victim to a lot of the liberal narratives where they get their news. We're looking more into that. So, we're covering all kinds of different news, and cable, of course, as well.